Weird science
is the revolution.
Miles Morales Spider-Man, and I believe it is issue number 13. It's written by Cody Ziegler, art by Federico Vicentini, Brian Valenza on colors, letters by BC's Corey Petit. And again, if you look at the Gang War Territories map, when you get to this book, well, we'll laugh about all the others. You got Frost Pharaoh and the Bumbler, as we said. And the idea that the Bumbler has anything but possibly an alleyway, or I don't even think this guy would control his own apartment, but he's got a section there, and he's going good with his pal Vespa. But you end up starting out in Misty Knight's safe house, and you get introduced to this Keisha Kwan. You can tell right away, okay, tech deal, boom, boom, and you get the lay of the land. And while I don't agree with Miles saying, that Peter, he ghosted me, and not really. A lot of things were on his plate. Trying to get Mary Jane back. The UFOs ended up hitting him with radiation. He almost died. He was in the hospital.
He owed some money. He didn't talk to Mary Jane or to Aunt May.
The hospital, he could have been in the hospital for all I know, all those 6 months. So the idea that he goes to him, I really am going, and my stance is that Miles was not paying attention and never went and saw Peter. He was in the hospital. Like the idea, man, that dude, he's not answering my texts. Oh, he was in a coma? I don't care. That's ghost to me. He combed me. So in this issue, Cody Ziegler, Miles feels like he kind of feels bad about all of this.
Yeah, in this issue, that was a good play. I like that.
That's why I just wanted to say it one more time, because I'm pissed off about how he's throwing a lot of shade at Peter. But this seems where he realizes, okay, let's get over that. I really miss him. You can see now, and I think Cody Ziegler does a really good job of it, maybe even a great job. And again, it hurts me to get rid of that vendetta. But the idea that you see that Miles lashed out because he's sad. He wants Peter to be around. He wants Peter, while he seems proud that he can do things himself. And that's where this Keisha Kwan kind of comes in and says, you don't need him, whatever. I think that he really does want Peter, and was sad that he wasn't around, taking it very personally, not realizing that it wasn't just all Peter's fault. But once we get past that, it's pretty cool. I mean, like I said, I like this whole play. I like his dialogue. It's very quippy. And I think that the problem is that we pretty much have a 20-some page fight. I mean, it is just fight, 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 fight. And in a Spider-Man book, Miles, Peter, whatever, you want to have your Spider guy quippy. So in my mind, I think this is where I think Cody Ziegler impressed me.
Yes.
Because it didn't get too over the top. Like, a lot of times something like this will happen and it grates on your nerves by the end. Like, you're like, I'm sick of hearing Miles or Peter or anybody keep doing the little jokes, and they're there, but they're there and mixed in with other things. At one point, you do end up getting Misty Knight and Colleen Wing, which even ties into the past, where they jump in. And so it does kind of, it scatters the things a bit so it doesn't feel so over the top, because you are really fighting some lame villains. I mean, you have horrible. Bumbler and Vespa, and they keep yelling we're the Buzz Boys or the Bee Boys. It's so crazy. But what you have, if you haven't been reading the book, and we haven't, you do end up seeing the whole Venom saber. And we get a look back at how he trained, which, again, it's kind of a cool thing. But really all it is so that we know that he's not going to kill people with it. That's kind of the gist when you go back, that this thing is so over the top.
See him training with Colleen Wing, who's a swords person.
And a lot of people I saw didn't like the idea. And again, you're there and you're like, well, unfortunately for a lot of people, I say, at this point, you have Nightcrawler as Spider-Man. He's got his saber deal, his light sword.
It's basically Luke Skywalker. I mean,
that's all it is.
The lightsaber.
When you see it and you read it, there are parts where you can tell that Cody Ziegler is giving a wink to Star Wars, which I love Star Wars, OG Star Wars, but you end up where I'm like, okay, I get it. And he's there. And again, while Misty Knight and Colleen at parts are like so irritated with him, it plays off well with Miles. Just like, oh man, this is why I'm glad to be an intern. Hey, what are we doing next? Oh my God. And really where I'll go, I thought, okay, Cody Ziegler, give you more credit too, because nobody's taking the Bumbler any bit seriously. So why wouldn't you goof around? But then you get the Frost Pharaoh. I'm like,
well, it's odd because Frost Pharaoh is one of the gangs, right? So shouldn't his area of New York always be snow covered?
You would think, but maybe he's like, can't pay for all of it, right? He's like pumping out the money like he's a ski resort.
Yeah, you're right.
But he better win this whole gang war. He's going to be bankrupt because it's got to cost some dough here to do all that. He's doing all his nonsense. And they're all there. I'm telling you, I thought it'd be funny at one point where all of a sudden, because say me and you are kids on that block, we'd be out like snowball fighting. Next thing you know, Sparrows and Mecca would just stop us. They'd just kill us. When I grew up, if this would have happened, we'd be trying to play football in the street. And instead of like somebody yell car, and then you move out Mecca, and then you move out of the way, and then you're like Bumbler, and then you keep playing because he's nonsense. But you end up where the big fight's going on. And I think that the art in general is pretty good. But at points, you do what I hate in a fight where you get too close. And there's a couple panels that I was even talking to you about where it's a small panel and then you throw in 3 or 4 word bubbles and you can't even see the art. But overall, you can get the lay of the land and see what's happening. And at one point, when Misty and Colleen show up, badass too, in the car, and Colleen goes to attack the Frost Pharaoh Mecca, and she does stab it with her sword, which sticks there, which then allows Miles. After, this is one of the things that drove me nuts, was Miles ends up, his web shooters freeze. So he's laying there in the snow in this whole play and then says, okay, they're unfrozen. I'm like, how would they unfreeze? And then there's a play. Cody Ziegler, I don't know where he's from, but they're, legitimately say maybe he's from California.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really know the snow. Like he might, because I've never in my life sat there and said, I have snow in all my, like it's sand. He plays it off like you're at the beach with sand. I've never once said, oh no, I got snow in all my cracks or things like that.
That, and also Colleen goes, the snow's about to melt. Like
I've never heard anybody in my life say that. Boots. Where you out? And we are, East Coast deal, Northeast.
If it's in your boots, it's in your boots. You're screwed either way.
Used to snow a lot more than now. Yeah, I'm not making any stances here or anything, but it used to.
Hasn't snowed in like 10 years.
Yeah, but as a kid, it would snow a lot. And there was never once that I'm out there in the snow and I'm like, oh man, guys, my snow in my boot is melting and that's the worst thing ever. It doesn't, no, that's silly. I mean, what you do is when you're done, you go home. Like anytime you're out in the snow, anytime. But as a kid, you're playing around and fight. You got your socks are always going to be soaked.
You got to go back in and get new ones.
Yeah, you end up having layers of socks. Mm-hmm. Maybe you should have played that because they didn't know, but still it seemed weird. And they're in New York City. It should have snowed at some point, but I don't know. Felt like Cody Ziegler has never actually played in the snow.
I think you're on to something.
We'd have to ask him. It was very odd, but he ends up where, again, you don't see Miles doing anything, it seems, to get the web shooters unfrozen, but they do, and he ends up zipping up. And at the point he sees where Colleen's sword is jammed in, and uses the Venom Blast on that as a conductor to kind of take out the whole play. It didn't play out as well as I hoped it would be, even where you look at it. But there's another thing, too, earlier that was funny, because when they were training with the sword, and I'm talking about the Venom Saber, you have Colleen fighting, and then the Misty shows up and like, hey, let's go, and you got to fight dirty. But you figured that was going to end up being something like big by the end here. It really didn't. But they're fighting, and then Miles turns invisible, and Colleen's like, man, nobody told me he could turn invisible. I'm like, that's like one of the 2 things that he does. What did they tell you that he does? I mean, really, he's going to Venom Blast you or turn invisible. That's it. Quip a little. I mean, seriously. But and I like Misty's like, it was in the, the dossier.
Yeah.
The dossier is like 2 things: can turn invisible, Venom Blast. That's it. That's all there would be there. She didn't read it, but it's kind of fun. But yeah, so with all of that, you are at the end also we're introduced, but it's something of this book, of the Cape Killers. The Cape Killers there, like Hightail. Again, these are characters that have been in the book, but if you're not reading like us, you wouldn't know. But Scorpion and Gust, you can tell Gust is not really fit to be anybody, any sort of bad. Seems very, she seems very nice, and she's like willing immediately when Miles like, hey, I didn't know you. What's your name? Expecting Gust, but she says, it is kind of funny. This actually makes me laugh. She's like, Jade Jackson. And then, I tell her, don't tell him your real name. And it's Gust. also isn't wearing a mask. Like, a lot of people are going around without masks, so I think that they could probably, like, even before this, I know for Misty Knight has already gotten facial recognition and knows everything about her. But, and I always say it anytime she comes in, I love Misty Knight. I think Misty Knight's so cool.
She's great.
But she's one of my favorites and one of my favorite cosplays. Just looking up that the one day, I'm like, oh my.
That's a rabbit hole.
I like that. So you end up where, as this goes on, then you have this play that everything's going to be taken care of by the, these Cape Killers, this whole play of we're in charge, Miles, you don't get involved. Oh my God, we got Gal coming in and saying that you heard the lady, I'm calling this one. And then they keep going with this idea to really make, and again, Cody Ziegler does let you know, and I think both of us got it, that they have tussled with each other at points, but also had to have teamed up at one point. I'm saying that because that's how it seems to really go in this, a couple editors' notes, but this seems like recent stuff anyway. But then you go and you see that other people are involved, and then the big thing, like Hobgoblin seemed to be like, oh my God, this is going to be featured
in
he's
on the
this
cover.
Miles. He's on the cover. He shows up on the cliffhanger page. Like, not even a page before. It's a cliffhanger page where he goes and, oh no, Prowler. And then we have all that. So it gets very personal going forward. A lot of money there. I like that whole stack of money there in that suitcase. I love when they put like the straps around the money. I don't know why, but I think that's cool. That means that you know what you're doing. So you end up.
That's the next level.
I love at the point too here where you have it. I guess you don't really know how it's going to maybe play out fully, but you have this Hobgoblin's like, I need you to help me with a little spider problem. And he says, say less. I'm something of a spider expert myself. And if you didn't know, you see in the reflection, you see that he's, but right under it says next to Prowler. And there's gang where I'm like, it kind
it's
of
a good
ruins
reminder.
the deal. It was a cool way, though, that if you knew, you're like, oh, crap.
But that's Cody Ziegler dialogue, that say less stuff, right?
Oh, yeah.
Did you ask Logan or any of your kids if that's what they say on the streets? I haven't heard that one. What was that one he was saying?
Bet?
Yeah,
that was the one. Yeah, I asked my kids. Softboy actually said he says bet all the time.
I've never heard that.
I hear what they yell on like Xbox Live. A lot worse than just
you
bet.
Can't say it on this podcast.
No,
right?
we would be canceled. Those are my kids. But what would you give this?
I'm actually going to go progressively higher. I'll give this one an 8. I was surprised.
8 out of 10 for me. If the art wasn't as confusing at some points, I could go to an 8.5. I actually was. I was impressed. And again, I know that a lot of people like the art in this book. I've read some reviews and things like that. I'm not saying that the art is bad. I'm saying that some of the progressions and that extra snow layer there really throws you off sometimes in what's going on.
There's a lot going on.
If you or anybody out there who had gotten a hold of me, because I'm telling you, a lot of people did. People had asked, oh, aren't you reviewing Miles? Hey, you should check out Miles. And I'd always just say, I don't like Cody Ziegler, so probably not. I think they might have been right. Maybe I just didn't give him enough of a chance.
Weird science is the revolution.